All right, this is episode 30 something. 30,
Something.
35, 6, 7, something like that. The subject is we're going to be talking about banned medical practices.
Like no, okay, yeah.
What do you think of that?
I heard you say band, and I thought like band like musical. No, not restricted medical practices. Okay,
Yeah, banned medical practices.
okay,
What these are like? Most of these are stuff that they did like way back in the day.
yeah,
That was just like
1800.
way wrong.
Yeah,
So the first one on my list is bloodletting. Do you know
yeah, I know that. I know that. Yeah,
the with bloodletting? For some reason, they used to believe that some people would make too much blood and that they had to let some of the blood out to
hmm
like fix whatever
very
problem it was.
very common. 16, 17, 1800s, I believe.
They there was whenever I was like doing the research, it was like I think they used it to almost all of this stuff was like mental problems for a lot of this
Yeah,
stuff. But like the
hmm
bloodletting was like for a cold or something, like if you're sick at all, or if you had any type of pain or anything, they like it's like your arm hurt or something. Say you had a headache, they just
yeah.
go into there. They're like, you
hmm
got too much blood, and they
Good.
just cut your arm open and just let some of it out.
That's how George Washington died.
Really?
He got sick from working out in the on his homestead, fixing fences. He comes in with a cold, and their physician, he's a very wealthy guy. His wife has their physician look at him, and he has a cold, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I'll just let some blood out, he'll be fine." Let some blood out, and he seals it back up, goes downstairs, talks to the wife, comes back up like an hour later, checks on him again, cold's still there, it's just as bad. Lets out some more blood, patches it again, does this like two more times. They come back up, and they tried to let out more blood, and nothing comes out. They bled him dry, and he died.
So that's so horrible.
Yeah,
Like,
we literally bled our first president out to just dry and dead.
do you think somebody paid him to let all of his blood out?
I don't think anyone would want George Washington dead. George Washington was respected and loved by pretty much everyone.
Except for the
So,
guy that wanted to kill him.
I mean, who would they be?
I
You
don't, Abraham Lincoln.
that might be it. Hmm
The one of the things that was I don't have this on my list, but one of the things that I saw was that apparently doctors used to be used as like weapons way back in the day, and like
Assassins.
yeah, assassins, same thing. And they would like that whenever like a political figure or a president or like a business competitor or like anything like that, they had problems, then they would just be like I'm assuming they'd go pay him and be like, hey, next time he gets some blood let out a little too much,
hmm
and then they'd just be dead. Or
Yeah.
they would like poison him with something or whatever and kill him.
hmm
So
I mean,
like
that's
so George Washington, they're like they probably cut his arm and then they're letting the blood out, and then like you would think that a doctor would like see all the blood that they let out and be like, hey boys, I think we got a little too much here.
no, he's a big boy. He's plenty of blood in there.
And then they're just like, he's probably sitting there, I'm getting a little lightheaded. They're like, oh, don't worry, we'll let a little bit more blood out, and then it'll take care of
It's
you.
working. Don't worry, that's a normal side effect.
Yeah, you're sitting there, everything's going black. Oh, well, we're letting it out. That doesn't even like, I don't even
No.
understand I mean, of course, I'm coming from this day and time
Yeah,
where like we know that that's like insane, but like,
I think they did know a little bit about blood work, and like they knew that blood clotting was a thing, probably, and that they must have rationed out that like, well, blood clotting occurs because you have too much blood, and so to prevent blood clotting from happening, we just let blood out. But that doesn't work because that's not how blood clotting occurs.
can, can you imagine going to like you go, you have a headache, you go in there, and they're just like, they don't even, there's no way for them to tell how much blood you have.
No.
Like they just look at you and just go, you got too much blood.
Yeah.
And you're just like, well,
Looking a
I don't
little,
think so.
you're looking a little red. Too much blood.
Do you know, you probably don't know this, but Do you know how like hospitals or stuff worked back then? Like, I'm sure there wasn't like a health insurance. Like,
Well,
how did these people get paid?
well, back before they had proper medical things, they had physicians. So it'd just be somebody who either, a lot of times, like really early on, they had monasteries. Like it'd be the religious people that would study medicine. So medicine, usually physicians would be like from the church, or like like a private physician was very rare. Uh,
Did these people pay to go to the churches back then?
I'm not sure. Maybe.
So like people would pay to go to the churches, and then since they went to that church, then that their doctor would like that was the way to pay to the doctor to get stuff done.
I
Maybe.
guess. I'm not sure the specifics of it. It might not even be church. I know for a fact there's some kind of. It was a very, very specific thing you had to go through. Like it was a lot of work to become a physician even back then. You couldn't just like teach yourself. You had to be authorized
Well,
by
okay.
something.
Here's another thing. If it was a lot of work and they had to like go through who knows what to become like a doctor, physician, whatever, what could they possibly have been learning? Because they're literally bleeding people out to fix them. So like,
They did.
what are they teaching them?
They did have herbs. They did like using plants. They've been using plants to heal people for like well over 1,000 years. Like mankind's always had a strong grasp of that plants are used in medicine.
Yeah.
Like even Native Americans have some plants that you were able to use as medicine.
Yeah. Oh, I
So
got a cold. Oh, here's some dandelions. Eat these.
just shooting this for a bit. And which some of them worked pretty well, but other than like they didn't have an understanding of the human body. Like they didn't understand the human body very well
Clearly.
because they didn't. It was forbidden to actually like study the human body after it was dead. It was considered like disrespectful and sinful to cut open a dead body. So they didn't have any way of learning what the inside of a body looked like. They just had a guesstimation. Like, I got some bones in my chest. Unless I have bones in my limbs, I guess I have like, like a cage or something like that.
So
But
you
other
mean
than
so
that,
you mean they're sitting there's like a bunch of these like almost doctors sitting in this thing and they're just like, yep,
yeah,
yep,
yeah.
that's hard. That's a
The only,
bone in there.
the only way they could tell what how the human body worked was on themselves. Like when themselves were out of life people, they couldn't look inside of a dead person's body, so they just guessed. I mean, they
They're
knew
just
the
like,
obvious
oh,
stuff.
these are my eyes right here.
Yeah,
I
this is
can
my
see with
eyes.
them.
I have a brain inside my head. There's a thing pumping that's a heart. I'm assuming I have something that digests things. That's a stomach. That weird thing in my bottom, my belly, and that's it.
When I get
That's all they
hungry,
had.
this thing grumbles. I don't know what it does, but
Hmm.
it gets upset.
They had a loose idea of some things, but they probably didn't know much like about livers or kidneys or things like that. 'Cause how could they, you know? So they
They're
just kind
just
of
like
guess.
like the first person that got to like cut open a body or whatever. They're just like pull out a kidney. What's this thing?
Yeah,
I didn't know this thing was in here.
the second heart. What?
This person's got 3 hearts, one up top and two in the bottom.
Wish I had a spare heart.
How do you like? I've always wondered how. I mean, obviously it was slowly, but like, say from, let's say 1700, they knew basically nothing. They were cutting people to let blood out, pretty much.
I mean,
So,
1700. Yeah, they didn't know a whole lot.
so in 300 years, or 320 years to present day, how will they like? It's weird how it's come so far, and
Oh
just
yeah.
because at some point, somebody at some point nobody knew what a kidney did, and then somehow somebody figured it out.
There was some person that if you go to medical school, I'm sure you know, a very very famous physician from a long time ago. First person to really open up a dead human body, and write what they found inside of it. And they were like shunned because it was viewed so wrong. But they learned so much that eventually people started like, yeah, that is messed up, but that they do have a good point about this. And like that was kind of the first foray into understanding what the ins and outs of the human body were, and from there it just went up. Like in the 1800s, proper blood work came into view. Like there were some brilliant physicians in the I think it was the late 1700s, early 1800s that started working out blood types and that blood had different things because then they were getting microscopes and things like that,
So
ways to
they're
study
like, not all of this stuff
stuff.
is just red.
Yeah,
There's
They
more to
started
it.
to, blood work was a big breakthrough. Like once they learned that, like that, blood had different types and things like that, the medical field opened up massively. Because then, like, but before that, it was generally known that you can't give someone else your blood. It's just a bad thing to do. Every time anyone's tried it, it does not work. But now we know that if you have the right blood type, you can give someone blood, and that's huge. That's life saving.
Yeah.
That was a massive breakthrough.
How long do you
And
think it
since
took
then,
them to
I don't know.
realize that there was blood?
I mean, blood's that's a basic primitive human supposed to know that.
Somebody had to have been cut at some point, and they know if I get cut, this stuff comes out. And then later,
Every
some doctor was like, you know that when you got cut, that stuff that comes out, I think there's too much of that stuff. We got to get some of that stuff out. like that's how that had to go.
they looked at it as like pus, like you had to get it out, be healthy.
Yeah, it's like
Maybe,
you haven't been getting cut enough, so the stuff hasn't been coming out.
but I
So
mean,
so
it's
we're just gonna cut you and get some of it out.
I don't think it really needs a physician because it's pretty obvious that like with the more blood that you lose, the kind of fainter you get, and if somebody dies from bleeding out. That's pretty. I'm pretty sure that even the most primitive tribes could work that out.
Apparently, they didn't work it out for old George Washington.
I mean, they were trying to be they were doing something stupid. They didn't. It's not they didn't understand what blood was. They just were getting ahead of themselves, and they thought they were smarter than they were. Like, well, maybe there's just a little bit too much blood. If we just let the right amount out,
They got like a
it'll fix it.
bucket full, and they're like,
Oh yeah,
this guy has a lot of blood. We got to get a lot of this stuff out.
yeah.
Meanwhile, he's just laid out, white as a ghost, probably.
Hmm. Your body naturally regulates your blood. You don't. It's not possible to have too much blood. You can have thick blood. That's a problem. If you have really thick blood, like I have thick blood, like my blood's like syrup. Like whenever I had to get a blood test, they cut my finger and they just like work the blood through my finger to get it to come out because it's so thick.
How'd you
That's not good.
how'd you get syrup blood?
I don't know. I just have thick blood apparently.
Did they tell you that, or did you come to that like yourself?
Well, I've just kind of always noticed that. Like whenever I get cut, the blood's really really thick and it takes a long time to bleed.
That's probably because you're dehydrated.
I mean, maybe I do get dehydrated a lot.
Whenever I get cut, it bleed. I mean, it doesn't bleed forever, but it bleeds pretty, like it just like runs out all over the place.
Hmm.
It's just like a bloodletting.
That's good. You got to get it out.
Yeah, I always have too much. So as soon as
Yeah.
everything's pressurized, so whenever I get cut, it's just like psst, and just like sprays out. Because of all, it's like a balloon. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So the next thing, besides blood, this is worse than bloodletting.
Yeah. Hmm.
They used to use heroin as
Oh yeah.
cough syrup, and they
Yeah.
advertised it as a non-addictive cough syrup.
Mm-hmm.
Heroin.
The stuff was good. Yeah. Cocaine is the same thing. Doctors used to prescribe cocaine to help with like I forget what it was like drowsiness. Like if you were feeling a bit tired, take some of this, it'll help. It'll wake you up.
Hey, are you not bouncing off the walls enough? Here, take a little cocaine. You'll be good. You'll have all the energy in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And then they probably got somebody in their office like, God, you got any more? Oh, I need a little bit more. I'm not awake enough.
Yeah. Yeah, cocaine was the normal thing. Like, actually, in the Napoleonic Wars, and the high-ranking generals would do cocaine on the battlefield, like watching on the horses, like watching how the battle's going. Well, actually, they had spyglasses, but like, watching how the battle's going, and, and like the British generals especially would just be like overlooking the battlefield, and just as it's going, just.
I mean,
watching it go.
I can't think of anything better. You watch a little
Yeah.
war, you do a little coke. I mean, what else do you want from life?
They thought it was just healthy. They genuinely thought it was a healthy thing.
They
to
thought
do.
it was healthy.
Oh yeah, they just think it was medicine.
Yeah, that's some good medicine.
Mm-hmm.
Dude,
I mean, if you didn't understand anything about it, you'd think it was good too.
did they
it's just
snort it back then?
huge percentage. Yeah.
Oh, what are you doing? I'm just taking my medicine.
Just take my meds. Just to get my caffeine.
Yeah.
I'm useless until I've had my first line of coke. Honestly.
Yeah. They were probably getting woke up like in their tents or whatever, and they're just like, man, I haven't even had my coke yet.
Yeah.
Like, come on, man. It's too early to be starting all this.
Hmm.
You know, they probably like a bedside. They probably had like a bedside table. Like they get up and they're just like, instead of a coffee, right there's the Coke.
Yeah. Maybe they mix the two together. They put Coke in the coffee.
Oh, I'm
It's their
sure they,
sugar.
they put it in Coke. I'm sure they probably put it in coffee too.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
They're probably just like, man, this coffee's good. I just can't get enough. Every time I drink it, I just keep on going.
Hmm.
I wonder if they ever like on the battlefield got like one guy like super high and then like sent him out there and he's just like just going nuts and they're just like, oh, look at him go.
Yeah. I mean, that's like the I mean, it's not real, but like that's what people think berserkers or Vikings would do. Like they just go into the woods and just eat a bunch of mushrooms, strip naked with a battle axe, and just go to town. But
Did
that's not
they
actually true.
strip naked? Was that a common thing?
That's it's a myth. It's
Oh,
a myth. They didn't actually do that. Berserkers aren't even crazy Vikings. Berserker is more of a word that means champion. Like the best of the Vikings would be a berserker, not some nut job with shirtless with tattoos all over his body with a great axe. That's a misconception. It's a cool misconception. I like it. I wish it was the truth, but no.
yeah, that's disappointing. I like the
Yeah,
mushroom stripping down naked and fighting people with an axe better.
yeah. That's more fun.
Could you imagine like say you're on a battleship and then here comes a whole another ship taking over your ship, but they're all naked. And they're just your ships get taken over just purely by naked people with battle axes. I mean, you're
Hmm.
not going to know what to do. You're going to be like, whoa, whoa, I didn't know it was this kind of party. I thought we were fighting.
I mean, they
And
didn't
then
have a
on top
lot.
of that, they're all on mushrooms, so they're just like just out of their minds
Yeah.
and naked with a battle axe.
Hmm. They don't have any kind of like reaction to you coming at them. They're just trying to kill that weird looking orange guy that's glowing in the corner. They don't
Yeah.
like the way you're looking at him.
I mean, what are you supposed to do? There's nothing you can do. You just have to just
I
like
mean,
hope that not everybody dies.
hmm.
You ready for this next one?
Sure.
This one's pretty messed up.
All right.
So, I mean, these are all messed up.
Yeah.
So they used to use mercury as
Mercury.
mercury as a topical ointment, and
Like
they had it as an ointment. They used it in lotions.
liquid mercury.
Yeah,
Oh,
toothpaste.
I did not know that.
And it was like a whole line of like different like self. They said they thought in the beginning that it was good for your skin. Is what they thought.
Oh,
So there was like there in the video I was watching. I think this was like in the 60s or something too,
yeah.
50s, and they said that there was like somebody came out with a whole like some company came out with a whole line of stuff that was all mercury. It's all supposed to be good for your skin, good for your health, good for your teeth, all that stuff. And then they said that like massive amounts of people started just dying from mercury poisoning.
Oh, yeah.
And then they realized like, it's not so
Mercury.
good.
Really, really poisonous. Yeah. It's like one of the most dangerous substances you can possibly ingest. One drop, and you're dead. It's a death sentence. There's nothing anyone can do to save you. You are dead.
Yeah. And they're like they're just rubbing it. Oh, I got all
Oh
this
yeah.
good lotion. Oh, let me get this toothpaste.
Get some layers.
It's what?
Get some layers. FPS 9000.
Yeah. You don't need SPF anything because you'll be dead.
It's the best defense.
I was trying to remember which. I don't think it was one specific company either. I think it was like just like a national thing that just all the companies started doing because there was like one guy that said it was good. So they just like all started doing it, and then everybody just starts dropping dead.
Yeah.
I wonder how
bet a lot.
like what the repercussions were for that.
See, like that's the thing that makes people skittish around new technology, like microwaves and like the 5G towers. People think the 5G towers can cause cancer because
The
things
5G
like that.
towers are gonna mess us up.
I mean, it is a lot of electromagnetic energy. Yeah.
I
But-
heard this is completely random and not on the subject of this podcast, but I heard that apparently your I can't it would I don't remember exactly what the frequency was, but apparently the 5G towers put off the same frequency that your brain puts off. So it's like the same thing as it's supposed to be the same thing as like a whenever you break a wine glass with your voice, you have to play its own natural frequency back to it
Yeah.
for it to break. It's supposed
Yeah.
to have like the same type of effect on a brain as if you're playing the same frequency back to the brain that just makes you go crazy.
I don't know about that. That seems a bit far fetched.
Well,
I mean,
apparently there was also some town, I don't remember where it was, but there was like not just one town, but like periodic towns
hmm
where they installed 5G in those certain towns, and then the rate of domestic violence went up in those areas.
it might be an effect. It's kind of a weird effect, but I mean, maybe.
It was pretty weird. That's kind of random. But something
Yeah.
else that I just remembered that goes along with that, they they still might do this, and I know for sure they used to do this. Was they used to put lithium in tap water, and
I think so. Yeah.
there was like a study somewhere where like there was, I don't remember if it was Chicago or whatever. It was a very violent city, and they started putting lithium in the tap water, and then the crime rates and everything started coming down because I guess lithium does something to your brain to like calm you down or whatever. And it was like some study that they did that wasn't like published or not published, but it wasn't like nobody said anything about it. They just like did it just to see what happens.
Lithium.
Oh, lithium. The Actually, let me just Google it because I think there was a whole Wikipedia page about it, or there was there was something, there was an article about it. Yeah, there's lithium in drinking water linked with lower suicide rates.
hmm
Oh, this one talks about naturally occurring lithium. There was one thing where they were, wherever it was, they were adding lithium.
Yeah.
There's one from Vice that says scientists say lithium should be added to drinking water. A new study in the published British Journal of Psychiatry finds a link between lithium in drinking water and lower suicide levels.
Lithium is a naturally occurring alkali metal which living organisms ingest from dietary sources. So you eat it anyway. You ingest it anyway in trace amounts, very, 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 very small amounts. But much higher concentrations, lithium is effective as a medication for mania and mood swings and manic depressive disorders. So it's a component in medicine, medication, psychological medication. So I mean, putting small amounts in,
Yeah, but you can't just throw that in the drinking water.
that
That's
seems like
like that's like
it's kind of
straight. That's like drugging everybody.
yeah,
Like I didn't agree to have lithium in my tap water.
that
You
seems
can just
like
put it in
seems
there.
absurd. They already put fluoride, I think,
Yeah,
in tap water.
and then that's supposed to like cause all kinds of problems too, isn't it?
Well, I don't know what problems it causes, but it is good for your teeth.
I thought it
So,
caused a lot of problem. I think it caused a lot of problems with like puberty or something. Like
mm,
not stunt your growth, but like it's supposed like if you drink a lot of it, it's supposed to do something to you.
I mean, I don't know. I don't think it's not your growth. I've never heard of that.
Well, I don't remember if that's exactly what it was, but it was something.
Yeah,
There was one specific thing that it did.
I'm sure there were concerns you've heard because everyone has concerns about everything when it comes to chemicals being added to anything.
You
But
mean
fluoride is.
whenever the government's just like, let's put some of this in the water.
Mhm.
We just won't tell them. It'll be fine.
Yeah, but yeah, fluoride. I'm pretty sure fluoride's like overall pretty good because it is very, very good for your teeth. It does help a lot with dental health. Like your teeth are like part of the reason why your teeth don't fall out as much, even if you don't brush them, is because you have so much fluoride in the water.
My teeth don't fall out at all. Not
Good
even
for you.
once. Have any of yours fallen out?
No.
Too much fluoride.
Hmm.
All right, are you ready for the next one?
Sure.
This one, I don't know why this was so funny, but this one I laughed so hard whenever I was reading about this one. This next one is called the Whirling Chair. Have you ever heard of it?
I may have heard of this.
So the Whirling Chair was what they used to cure schizophrenia.
I have not heard of this.
So what they would do for schizophrenia is they believe, this is another thing with blood. They believed that schizophrenia was caused by bad blood getting to your brain. And I guess they decided that you couldn't just like let it out with bloodletting. So they decided that the only way to get the bad blood away from the brain was to put you in this chair, and then they would spin you in circles really fast until you went unconscious. And then the idea was that by them spinning you in circles real fast and then you going unconscious, that the bad blood is getting slung away from the brain.
That is so idiotic, because when you're spinning, the motion of you spinning and being thrown back in your chair, the motion is coming upward into your head. So that's what makes you unconscious, because the blood is being held in place in your brain. It's not being oxygenated, and you lose enough oxygen to just go unconscious. That's what causes that. So you're just keeping the blood in the brain.
Well, here's the best part. This wasn't like just a one-time treatment. Whenever you came in to get this treatment done, they would put you in the chair, spin you till you come unconscious, and then you'd come back and then you like wake up or whatever, and then they would ask you if you felt better, and if you didn't feel better, then they'd just do it again. And then they would just keep doing it over and over until
either you died or you said that you felt better, so you could go home.
Yeah, pretty much. And that's the cure. Mm-hmm. So you go to the doctor, you're like, I think I hear a voice, and they're like, oh well, just sit down in this chair right here, and then they just start winging you around in a circle. I think the whirling chair thing, I think that was like 1800s ish, somewhere between like 18 and 1900, because in the pictures that it showed with it, it was like there was like two poles, and then there was like a basket, and it said that like they would put you in the basket, and then it looked like they would just like wind it up on the poles, and then like just let it fall so it like unravels going down the poles. So I guess they would just like do that over and over and over until you passed out. And then there was another one that was like a big pole in the middle, and then there was like a weight on this end, and then like a basket on this end, and then you would sit in this basket, and then somehow or another they would spin you around. It was it looked very, very medieval torture.
Yeah.
And
the only thing I can think of that would even cause your blood to get out of your brain is if you made a device that like made you spin in circles real fast, but with your head like attached to the spinning thing, so your feet is where all the motion would go. So all the force would be all the blood would be forced down to your feet. But that's also not healthy.
They might have done it that way. You might have like had your head towards whatever the fulcrum of the spinning thing was, and then all the blood would just leave your brain, or so they could get all the bad blood out.
Yeah.
That one,
I mean, it wouldn't drain your brain.
It what?
It wouldn't drain your brain. You'd still have blood in your brain.
They don't know that. That's why they're spinning people in circles in chairs.
Yeah. Want to find out?
I would just like to see like an interview of someone who had this done. Like how did it help you? They'd be like, well, it didn't. I want to know, like, what if you went to like get this thing done, or you say you went to the doctor, they decided to do this. They put you in the spinning chair, they spin you around and all that stuff, and then you're just like, you get out. I think I hear more voices than before. They'd be like, oh man, this guy's got some really bad blood. They'd put you back in there and like crank it up, spin you even more. Mm-hmm. Oh, and I think a high percentage of people died.
Really? From just doing that over and over?
Yeah, from just like just going. Because I mean, you got to think if you're already schizophrenic and then you just lost consciousness. Whenever you come back to being conscious, you're not going to be right. Like
Yeah.
you're gonna like feel dizzy and like you're probably not gonna
You would
make.
feel awful.
Yeah, you're gonna feel like garbage. They
And you
probably
do
they
that
probably
again
put them
and
in
again
there.
and again.
Yeah, and you just keep going until they feel better.
Oh god, you would, yeah, that probably cause like, would it be concussion? It's just a lack of oxygen to the brain. Like it might make you go brain dead
It was
just from
just
having a lack of oxygen for that long.
yeah, it would just be brain damage.
Yeah,
I guess the idea is just to damage the brain until
until
you're not
damage is
schizophrenic
schizophrenia.
anymore.
It's like how you treat cancer. You just try and damage everything around it and try to see if it kills it off before you kill the patient.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
The this next one, I mean, this next one's horrible too. These are all bad.
Yeah.
But the next one, ice pick lobotomy.
Wow, that is a hell of a name.
Do you know what an ice pick lobotomy is?
I have heard of references to it, but I don't know exactly what it is.
So
I'm
this,
assuming it involves an ice pick.
oh yeah, it involves an ice pick.
Mhm.
This one's like this is messed up. So this one was also to treat. I think it was to treat. They didn't call it depression. I think in the article they called it hysteria or something, which I guess they just kind of was like a blanket term they used for probably like depression and anxiety or something.
Hysteria is just general mental disorder.
But they also used it for schizophrenia and just like crazy people, I guess, whatever they deemed as crazy.
Yeah.
So with the ice pick lobotomy, what they do is they take an ice pick, they stick it up your nose, and then they take a hammer and pound it up your nose into the frontal lobe of your brain, and then spin it around in the frontal lobe of your brain. And the idea is that if they damage enough tissue in the front of your brain, they thought that would stop you from like being crazy or schizophrenic or whatever. Because they thought that the front of the brain was like where all that stuff was controlled. So they just figured if they just damage all that, then you're good.
I mean, if you're dead, then you can't be crazy. So yeah, it is technically a cure.
Which is pretty much what happened. They said that like a very large portion of the people died, and the ones that didn't die were brain dead.
Obviously, yeah, because you're causing major brain damage.
Yeah. An ice pick getting pounded up your nose
Up your
into
nose.
your brain.
Who came up with that? Who just looked at like came back from a hiking trip and just thought, you know what?
I don't remember the doctor's name, but actually I can probably Google it and find it real fast. But it was a very like pronounced like doctor. Like this was his like greatest accomplishment or whatever. And he killed like I think they said something like 2,000 people or 4,000 people.
That's insane.
Before, yeah. And another thing, they were doing this like up into the 70s.
Oh, God. I mean, like they have similar things nowadays, like hypodermic needles. They have precision, and they can actually like
Dr. Walton Freeman.
Freeman.
Yep. He was the one that created or invented the lobotomy in 1941. And lobotomies in Ontario were from 1948 to 1952. I was thinking that they did it to the 70s. This says the Soviet Union banned them in 1950.
So Soviets were quicker to pick up on than we were.
Yeah, apparently.
That's pretty sad, considering what the Soviets did.
Okay, so maybe it was in the 50s.
Hopefully.
Yeah, that's what it was looking like to the 50s. Well, he only killed like like 2,000 people. So,
Only.
Well, yeah, only. But so if he did it from the 40s to the 70s, it would have been way more than 2,000.
Yeah.
And it said like 60% of the lobotomy patients were women, because like women that were deemed hysteric, they would just get lobotomies.
Yeah.
And so they did the ice. There's two ways they did it: the ice pick through the nose, or they would do the ice pick and they would slide it like above, like between your eye and your skull, and then go up that way into your brain.
Imagine that you'd pop out eyeballs left and right as you did that.
Probably.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because there's no like sedative.
There's yeah.
They're
You
just
have
like,
to
all right,
feel
well,
raw.
hold still, and then they just pound this thing into your head, and then they just sit there and just work it around. They're like, oh, he's brain dead. Oh, no more schizophrenia.
Like, is there supposed to be, like, would there be like a method to it? Like you crank it 3 times, 3 inches to the left, you hear that click, and then you just rotate it all the way around again and pop it back out. That's the trick to it. Or is it like, what was the thinking like of twisting it even? Like,
The twisting, like they would I can't even say words. The whole point of twisting it, what they would stick it in, and then they would rotate it around because they wanted to damage as much tissue as possible in the frontal.
the goal was to damage tissue.
Yeah, that was the whole purpose. They said was to sever the tissue of the front portion of the brain, because they I don't know if they knew or they just assumed that the front portion of the prefrontal cortex was where all of these problems were coming from. So if they just damaged it and just like severed all the whole thing, then the problems would just go away.
Yeah, I mean, that's insane thinking.
Yeah. That's like the same thinking as like if you break your arm, just cut it off.
Just cut it off. You don't break an arm anymore.
But yeah, if you just cut it off, then it's not broken because it's not there.
Yeah. Yeah, you're losing vision. One eye just popped out. Just popped out of the skull. No problem.
Yeah, I mean, who knew? You don't need both of them. You have two. Just give up one.
You have a spare.
Yeah, you got a spare. Just use that one. That's why you have it.
Yeah.
This next one is this one's just as bad as lobotomy. So, whenever people would go to the doctor for a headache, guess what they would get?
Cocaine.
Well, maybe sometimes, but in other cases, they would get holes cut in their head.
To let the ache out. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a very common practice if you had a migraine or whatever, they would burrow holes in your head to your brain to let the pressure out, and that was how they thought that you cured headaches.
I mean, it's pounding. Obviously, you have too much blood in your brain. Just let some blood out.
Yeah,
Problem solved.
and it was like, I can't remember the percentage. It was a very, very, very high percentage of people that just died from having this done.
Oh yeah.
And then they, in the video that I was watching about it, apparently this is something that they've found all the way back to like cavemen, having like holes drilled in skulls and stuff. Because I guess they thought the same thing probably.
Yeah.
Cavemen are banging rocks together trying to make fire, and they're just like, drill a hole in the head.
Yeah.
And they
I mean,
just start,
the basic idea of it makes sense to how someone could think of that, because like when you get a headache, your head's pounding. Like it feels like there's too much blood. Like it's just pressure. It's just full on pressure. It feels like there's either too much gas or too much blood in your brain.
Yeah.
So you got to relieve that gas, and to them it just makes sense. Oh, drill a hole, gas or blood, whatever it is, comes out, and I feel much better. Like trying to
you
clear out your sinuses
you end up
and
dead
whatnot.
is what you do.
And you just die.
Now, I would have been completely like unfazed if I saw this and it like stopped at like cavemen.
Yeah.
So it'd be like, okay, they're cavemen. They don't even have fire. They're literally banging rocks together in a cave. Whatever. I can understand that. They don't know what they're doing. But this is like, again, 1900 stuff.
Yeah.
Just straight, not even, they don't have power drills.
No.
Just hand drilling holes in people's heads. They're just like, well, this will get you all fixed up. And they're just like, oh, he died. Oh, man. No headache anymore. And they just throw him off. And that's what had to be happening.
Yeah.
This next one, this is probably the dumbest one on this entire list. This is as stupid as it gets.
It's a difficult competition, but
this is a hard competition. But have you ever heard of stink therapy?
I have not.
So, do you remember the Black Plague or the Black Death?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's the same thing. I think it's the same thing. Okay. So, whenever the Black Death was first going around, they thought the cure for the Black Death was stink. Because I guess they thought the Black Plague was transmitted through air, or they thought it was transmitted through air.
Well, yeah.
So they thought that the stink would like kill it in the air.
Mm-hmm.
So people were instructed to do two things. One, they wanted people to move all their farm animals inside of the
Inside
houses
the house.
to
I've heard of that.
to provide the stink.
Yeah.
And then secondary, they were told that everybody in the house was supposed to fart in jars and keep it in a jar. And if they felt sick, they're supposed to open it and smell it because it's supposed to kill the bacteria.
God.
So all these people just have all these jars that they're farting in, and then when they start to feel sick, they're just like, "Oh, let me open this jar. Oh, I feel better now," and they close it back up.
I mean, there's two sides to that coin actually. So there's that what you just told me, and there's the plague doctors with the wicked nose masks they had. The purpose of those masks?
To divert the smell.
Yeah. They would put herbs, like special herbs, and they'd light them on fire, like not on fire, but like they'd light them so they were smoking, and they just that nose would hold the herbs, and they'd just be breathing in smoking herbs. Like plague doctors would take people across like into islands where they just let the sick people die away from everyone else, and the plague doctors would have to be the ones that ferry the sick over there, and the plague doctors would just be sitting there, toasted because they're just smoking herbs the entire way through. But that's how they prevent themselves from getting sick.
Like when you say herbs, are they smoking weed?
I mean, it probably wasn't. No, it wasn't marijuana, but it was just random medicinal herbs. Like any medicinal herb they find.
So they just got like some rosemary and some parsley, and just
just stuck it up the nose piece, and then just lit it.
How would like your throat would have to be so dry?
Yeah, I mean, it's a precaution you have to take because it's that or getting this deadly disease that is a death sentence if you get it.
Right, but looking back now, that had nothing to do with them getting it or not getting it.
Yeah.
So they were just breathing all this smoke for nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm sure they didn't know anything about
no, they didn't know anything
lung cancer, so they're breathing all this. Because
it wasn't like a massive plume of smoke. It was just a little bit of faint steam.
It's like a small campfire.
Yeah.
They're just constantly breathing campfire.
It wasn't like they weren't inhaling ash. It was just like steam. It was more like steam.
So wait a minute. If it was in the nose, didn't it like fog out where they could see?
Well, no, because it's just a little bit. They wouldn't light it on fire. It's just very, very, very faint smokiness to it. Just the bottom of the herbs are black, and they're just emitting a little bit of smoke.
So, what I've never heard of this island. What did they do? They put all the sick people on an island together?
No, they're islands. Anytime they any island off the shore of a place that had the infection, the plague doctors would take the sick people and they'd ferry them over to the nearest island and just drop all the sick people off and let them all die on the island so that they wouldn't spread the disease. So that you just get you get the disease. Plague doctor comes, picks you up. He forces you to get on this boat with him, with a bunch of other sick people, and he ferries you across.
So
and you get dropped off an island, and you just die.
What if you don't want to go to the island?
You had no choice. It was either you go to the island or you die, and your body gets dropped off into some disposal place, like a pit of bodies with a disease.
What year was this? The Black Plague?
It was 1200s.
1200s?
1200, 1300s a month, yeah, some of that.
Oh,
medieval.
Well, that kind of I mean, it's still bringing the animals in the house and smelling farts in a jar is still absolutely crazy. But if it's 1300s, that's a little bit acceptable, I guess.
Mm-hmm. I mean, they didn't have much understanding of medicine back then. The physicians back then, their solution to everything was you have smallpox in your arm, cut the arm off. If your leg's broken, cut the leg off. If you
broke your leg, they cut it off.
A lot of times, because they just if they didn't know how to heal it, just take it off.
They didn't know that it would heal itself.
No, that was consistent until the 1900s.
They would just cut. So you break your arm.
Oh yeah.
They just cut the arm off.
Amputees were rampant, especially militaries. If you were a military man, there was a really good chance you'd become an amputee, because if you get your arm broken or your leg broken, they just cut it off because they didn't understand that you have to hold it in place and it heals itself. They just kept on trying to use it, and it was unusable, getting in the way, so they just took it off.
So they're like they have a broken leg and they're just like they just broke it and they're like ow, ow,
Yeah,
ow. Oh, it's not it's not fixed.
like
Next day, ow, ow.
usually like it'd be like if it's something small like a broken toe, they didn't mess with it. But if it was like your leg was broken and
You break your toe and they take your whole leg off. It's like, all right, we gotta get rid of the whole thing. The whole thing's bad.
it'd be like extreme. Like if your knee, like the joint of your knee was broken, like it snapped, and you had like a bone sticking out, they take it off instantly.
Do you think they understood broken bones?
They understood broken bones. They just didn't understand how to treat them. They didn't understand what to do with them. If it didn't heal on its own, take it off.
And they just never waited 6 weeks.
No, if it wasn't like a finger or a toe, or a nose, and it just didn't heal itself, like if you couldn't just avoid using it to keep it still.
At some point, you would have to think that they were like somebody had like broke a finger or something, and then they eventually it got better, and they're like,
Oh yeah.
well, hold on a minute. If the
Broken
finger
fingers.
gets better, maybe the arm gets better.
I mean, it's a kind of a big leap from arms to fingers because you can still use your hand without with a broken finger, but you can't pick anything up or do anything with a broken arm. You just have to let that arm stay still, which was impossible because you needed your arm.
Well, here's another secret. You also can't pick anything up if your arm is cut off.
Yeah.
So
Well,
either way, you can't do anything with it.
at least you don't have dead weight. At least you don't have to deal with this constant pain as it just moves around. Dead nerves.
I think I would rather have like just try to hold my arm still for a long period of time because they didn't have like it wasn't like a real doctor that would amputate your arm. Didn't they just strap you down and saw it off?
Well, it depends. Like sometimes they just have like it's rich people had physicians, physicians weren't much better, and like the military had like field surgeons. And the surgeons were just like people who had the most medical knowledge, even though that might not be any really at all. Like they might have just read some books about it. Like you know something about this. You've read. I've read a book. You're the surgeon of you're the army surgeon now. So you take care of this.
So what's your medical knowledge? Well, I know that the brain thinks. Sometimes you get too much blood, and you cut off broken arms. You're hired, and then now you're the doctor.
A lot of the medical industry was figuring out how to cut off limbs without killing the person, like without having them bleed out, and like the easiest, quickest ways to do it.
I am so glad we are so far past that now.
Oh yeah.
Like I'm so glad we're not still trying to figure out how you can cut off people's limbs without killing them.
Yeah, and like the worst part about it was like it wasn't your choice. Like if you're a soldier and your leg gets hit by like some guy with a a really big mace comes along and just clocks you in the shin, and your shin is busted completely.
Some guy with a mace. What do you mean a mace?
A mace.
What
Like
kind of war is this?
a normal war.
A mace?
A mace, not the spray stuff, but
Right.
a mace.
Right. The spiky
No, a
ball
mace
with a stick and you sling it?
Well, that's a morning star. Maces are just anything that has a handle, a shaft, a one-handed shaft, and a blunt piece of metal on the end of it, or even just wood. That like anything that's just designed to be a blunt trauma one-handed weapon is a mace.
Oh. Wait a minute. You said they did this up to the 1900s, right?
Well, later on it'd be if you get hit by like if somebody if you get into a melee, there are a lot of broken bones. Usually, like in later on, like the Black Powder era, like 16 to 1900, if you got hit and your bone was broken, oftentimes the limb was taken with it because it'd be a cannonball, and if a cannonball hits you, you're not going to need amputation. It's going to take everything you need to get going.
The amputation is going to be done for you.
Oh yeah,
very quickly.
lightning fast. Oh yeah.
Didn't they used to get people like really drunk to do surgeries?
Oh yeah. They'd use alcohol to numb them. Yeah, that was the best they had. And they also used alcohol to disinfect the wounds later on.
So like you're drinking it, and they're just like they're just like, hold on, don't drink all that, and then they pour some more on there and drink some more.
They actually boiling wine was very very common, which works If you boil wine and pour it onto a wound, it works really well. It disinfects it.
Why
It
do you have to
hurts.
boil it?
I think it just helps with the concentration of the alcohol or something like that. I'm not sure. I'm not sure why you boil it, but I know that you boil wine and you pour it into the wound, and it's really, really, really good disinfectant. Like it's the best thing they had to disinfect wounds.
Do
It
you
worked
pour
really
it?
well.
Do you pour it in the wound while it's hot?
Yeah. So it's scorching hot. It gives in.
So
You
that's
hold
why it
you
kills
hold them
everything.
down. Well, no, it didn't kill. It didn't kill them. It was really effective disinfectant.
No, I'm saying that's
It
why it killed
actually.
all the germs and stuff. It's because it's
Oh
boiling
yeah,
hot.
yeah. Because well, yeah, but it also because it's alcohol.
I wonder if they could have the same effect just by boiling water and pouring
No,
scalding water on it.
I
Oh,
mean it'd probably get the dirt out, but it wouldn't kill the germs because it's not alcohol.
no, the heat would.
Well, he wouldn't get all of it. He wouldn't get all the germs.
Over 200 degrees?
Well,
All that stuff's dead.
it wouldn't be the same amount. Like it wouldn't be as thorough.
Oh, yeah.
No.
No, none of the germs are going to live at 212 degrees.
Well, the germs aren't being kept at 200 degrees. They're being splashed on. Some of them are being exposed to it extremely quickly. The germs would have to be kept in a 200-degree environment in order to die.
You sure?
Yeah. You can't just splash boiling water on a wound and it instantly just vaporizes all the germs.
I think they all go away.
No.
Well, it's not. They're not. They don't have like a boiling water spray bottle. They probably got like a big pot and they just like dump it on there.
I mean, you don't want to dump too much because it might actually like do some real damage,
Well,
like
that's
30-degree burns.
they're already cutting their arms off with saws and getting them drunk to do it. What are they worried about? A little bit of damage.
I mean, like major damage, like 30-degree burns.
That's nothing. You just cut away the burns.
Mm-hmm.
That's like they're gonna do something to your arm. So say they pour a bunch of water on your arm, but then the water also burns your leg. So they're just like, wow, I goes, well, take the leg off too.
Take it like too. Mm-hmm.
People are crazy. Like that's insane.
Yeah.
So this next one, this is evil. Like this one is torture, like just pure torture.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you by chance happen to know how they used to fix a stuttering problem?
No.
Though the cure for a stutter, they would cut the tongue off.
I was about to say that exact same thing.
That's because they believed that a stutter was caused by spasms in the tongue. So they said most of the time what they would do is they would start by cutting off pieces of the tongue, but they said that in most cases they would just keep cutting pieces off the tongue until there was virtually no tongue left.
Yeah.
And then once they couldn't speak, then they couldn't stutter.
Well, there you go. Problem solved.
Yeah. You're like 10 years old. You go to the doctor. You're like, got a stuttering problem. He's just like, you're all good. And you're just like, oh, you know, like, you can't enunciate anything. Can't move any food around. You can't do anything because you don't have a tongue.
Yeah.
This next one, have you ever heard of rest therapy?
No.
Okay, so this one was really popular around the time, whenever this time period was, that women were starting to fight for their rights.
So that'd be 1800s? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, like the right to like education, vote, all that stuff. Okay, so whenever the women were fighting for their rights was like what years? Or what year
So
roughly?
1800.
Like mid
Like
1800s or like beginning?
mid. It'd be mid, yeah.
Okay, so that's whenever this was very popular, the rest therapy. So, rest therapy was it was like 98 or 96%, something like that, women.
Mm-hmm.
So, whenever the women were fighting for their rights and all that stuff, those women that were fighting for their rights were deemed hysteric.
Yeah.
So, the therapy for hysteria was rest therapy, where they would take them into rooms and tie them down to a bed and make them rest.
Yeah.
And then they would literally just leave them tied up to the bed until they agreed that they felt better.
Mm-hmm.
And then by feeling better would mean not fight for your rights.
Yeah.
And that was the therapy.
Yeah. That's not even medical. That's just pushing an agenda.
Yeah. It was probably just them pushing the agenda. There's probably, I'm sure there was no research.
Nothing about that, yeah.
Like, could you imagine being like, you're like all fired up about something and they're just like, you need to rest, and they just like strap you down to a table,
Mm-hmm.
and then you're just sitting there just like, hey, you can't move, can't do anything, and they're just like, do you feel better? Do you feel better? And you're just like, no, I don't feel better. Like, rest. It's like whenever you're really mad, someone telling you to calm down. Like, you're never gonna calm down, except for it's like a bunch of doctors and you're just like losing your mind, and they're just like, calm down, just calm down. Because I'd never heard any of that.
Yeah.
Like, I knew that, like, whenever the women were like fighting for their rights and stuff, I knew they were like made out to be crazy or whatever. But I didn't know that they made them like do rest therapy and strapped them down to beds until they quit.
Yeah, I think I have heard of that. I think I've heard of. I didn't hear that. I never heard of the term, but I've heard of suffragettes being described as hysterical, as a way to like try and undercut them.
Yeah, from all of these, there was a lot of that. A lot of like them deeming women being like hysteric for whatever reason, and then that was the treatment. Because a lot of the lobotomy was women. I think a lot of the whirling chair was women.
Mm-hmm.
Women and schizophrenics, which I guess schizophrenics are mainly men. Yeah, then the rest therapy was mainly women. They I wrote this down. They strapped them to the table until their mood improved. That was what their goal was. Whenever the mood improved, then they were no longer hysteric and they could let them go. So I guess once you stop freaking out because you've been strapped to a table, then you're good to go.
Mm-hmm. Seems reasonable.
I can't even imagine how crazy people probably started going when they started getting strapped to tables.
Oh yeah.
In the video that I watched of it, they showed a room that was like probably 40 or 50 different women, and they just were all in beds, just like with a leather strap, like just strapping them down to the bed.
Yeah.
It was insane. Next, we have Electroshock therapy.
I've heard of this. Mm-hmm.
They used it for people who were, I think it was mainly for people who was depressed or schizophrenic, which seems to be a big trend here of things that they're trying to cure or whatever.
Yeah.
And from the pictures and from what I saw, it looked basically just like just taking a cord from a wall outlet and they just put it on your temples.
Yeah.
And they pretty much just shock you over and over and over and over until you feel better.
Well, the premise behind it was that mental disorders were caused by an imbalance of electrical signals in the brain. Like the electricity in your brain was just out of order. Like it was just off beat, essentially.
Oh,
and
so if we add some of our electricity to it.
If we just give them the right jolts and the right increments, the right patterns, it'll just, reset it and get it to working right. Which obviously makes no sense, but I mean.
So I always say this was before this was ever invented, but they were kind of had the same principle as like the things where they shock your heart back, kind of like the same thing but for your brain.
I mean, it's similar, I suppose. I
guess the principle they were going for is like kind of the same.
Yeah,
it's like we'll just keep shocking them until they start like foaming out of the mouth, and then we're like, oh, you're good.
Yeah.
It seems to me like a lot of this stuff seems like stuff that they don't fix the problem. They just torture you enough until you agree that the problem is fixed. And then they use that as their research for that's how you fix it.
Or like they view, making sure that the problem is impossible to reoccur as fixing the problem.
Yeah. Like you break your arm, cut the arm off, you can't break it anymore.
Can't break it anymore. It doesn't
Yeah. I don't know what kind of like scientists were like doing all this type of research for all these years,
Yeah.
but like, and I mean, this is, I'm sure this, what I found, I'm sure it's just the tip of the iceberg. I'm sure
Yeah.
they probably had way worse things going on. And then all it did was make people just like, all right, I am sick of this. I feel better. I know I don't feel sick. I don't hear any more voices. I just need to get out of here.
Hmm. It's
The
usually the brain stuff is the worst because like the brain's such a delicate instrument, and like it's so different from every single other organ. Like every other organ, you can just fix it using some simple method. Not the brain. You cannot do anything drastic with the brain.
yeah,
Like the smallest little movement, gone. You're dead.
the brain just can't, you can't handle that. You can't
Hmm.
be sending 110 volts to your brain.
Yeah.
The I wonder if anybody ever did like an electric lobotomy. Like take two
Like
ice picks and stick them in the brain and like use the shock therapy.
yeah.
I'm I mean that sounds completely insane.
I mean
I would
that's like
almost guarantee that somebody tried it.
oh, I'm pretty sure that's what Frankenstein's based on. Like he
An
doesn't he
electric
drive two
lobotomy?
he drives two bullets into the brain and then shocks them, and that's what creates life.
Okay.
Like he puts an electrical signal in the brain that starts the electrical, the synapses, the relaying, and that gets the brain kickstarted. That's what makes the monster come to life.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
This is the last one I got. This is this is the worst. Like the worst mentally
How?
for you. Huh?
How could it be worse?
Well, I haven't told you what it is yet.
I mean, it just I can't think of much worse. And
this is worse for your brain than anything yet. This is worse for your body worse than anything yet. Worse for everything.
okay,
Insulin shock therapy.
insulin shock therapy.
Have you ever heard of this?
No.
You know what insulin is, right?
Yeah.
So, this was another thing they used for schizophrenia and depression and hysteria. But I think the main purpose of this was schizophrenia
Yeah.
because they used this a lot in like I forget what they're called, like institutions and stuff, like where they would put all the crazy people together and they would
Asylums.
like do all these like tests on them.
The
This
worst
was
things come from asylums.
yeah, asylum. That's what I'm looking for. This is where that was extremely popular was in asylums.
Yeah.
So insulin shock therapy, what they do is they give you a large dose of insulin so that your blood sugar drops.
Hmm.
And then once your blood sugar drops, they I don't even know if they measured the blood sugar. I think they probably just gave you the insulin and then they just let your blood sugar drop to the point where you would have seizures. And then after you had a seizure for so long, then they would insert a feeding tube and give you some type of glucose drink to bring you out of your seizure and get your blood sugar back up. And then they would ask you if you quit hearing the voices or if you felt better. And then if you didn't or you were unresponsive, they did it again. And they just just like the whirling chair. They just repeated that cycle until you felt better. So you were just like
repeated seizures.
yes. So they would just repeatedly drop your blood sugar to like, and tons and tons of people died.
Oh yeah.
So they would just drop your blood sugar down to the point where you're unconscious and like having seizures and like, there was a video. I think it was a reenactment. I don't think it was like an actual like session. But it was like they had someone like strapped down to a table and they're just going like this, just like shaking back and forth from having the seizure. And the doctors are just sitting there just like with a clipboard, just like watching them. And then like after 2 or 3 minutes of them having a seizure, then they're like, all right, bring him back. And then they like give him the drink.
Yeah.
That's
That's where like that's prime horror movie stuff because like asylums like that stuff actually happened. Like asylums, see like there's absolutely no one looking over this. There's no regulation. There's no one stopping anyone from these doctors doing whatever they feel like doing. So a lot of times doctors just did stuff for the hell of it because they knew that these patients don't have anyone that's gonna be sad to hear them go. So it's usually the only people that caring for them like have given them up for them. Like when you check someone into an asylum, you're like pretty much agreeing to never see them again, because like
Yeah.
that was common. Like you just give them away. They're not your problem anymore. So like these doctors had free test subjects for anything they wanted to try. So doctors went ham. Like they tried anything they could think of on these patients just for fun, just as curiosity.
How would you get into an asylum?
You have to be diagnosed with some kind of mental disorder, which is very, very, very easy to do.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
like,
It's especially
yeah,
in these days.
yeah,
Could you imagine? Okay, let's say you lived through all the stuff that they had been doing to you. So like you started off. Let's go back to the top of the list here. Okay, say you have schizophrenia, right?
yeah.
You've had the bloodletting. They've cut you open, let all your blood out, and all this stuff. You still hear the voices, right? So
Yeah.
then they give you some of the heroin, and then you still hear the voices, right? So then they
Mhm.
put you in the whirling chair, and they whirl you around for who knows how long, and you still hear voices. And then they give you the lobotomy, and they jam the ice pick in your head, and you still hear voices. And then you go what was that? Electroshock therapy. They shock you like just as much as they can, and then you're telling them you still hear voices, and then you end up in an asylum, and then they do all the insulin shock therapy, and then you're like, I still hear them.
Mhm.
What at that point? What do they do?
I mean, if you somehow survived all that,
Yeah,
then they'd probably just like throw you into a like a dark cell or like strap you to a bed and just keep you as the lab rat.
they just be like, any new test that we got, we're doing them
Yeah,
on this guy.
we're done with this guy because this guy's proven himself to be the most resilient. He's survived everything.
Yeah, they're looking at their records. They're like, nobody else has survived all of this stuff.
Mhm.
I think there's something going on here.
This one does not want to quit.
Yeah. So so you had to be checked. So you had to be diagnosed with something, which obviously
Very easy.
didn't take anything. You could have been like, I think I heard a ghost. You
Or
have
that
schizophrenia.
ghosts were commonly accepted to be a thing, but yeah, if you had like any minor thing, like if you had episodes where you'd like schizophrenia, or if you had if you had like violent behavior, if you were just like a very 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 violent person, they could diagnose you with possession. That was considered a major thing. They'd take you to an asylum for that was a lot of possessions.
For being possessed.
Possessed, yeah.
Did they
Possession's
call
a big
like a
thing.
preacher or something or like
So, yeah, yeah. But usually the preachers couldn't do anything to them because like a big mental. I forget what it's called, but it's like when you believe you're possessed, even though you're not, or you just believe you're something other than human. It makes you act like an animal. It's just it's all in your head, and they would feed into that by actually like telling you that you are possessed. So they'd reaffirm your belief, which would make you act even crazier, and they'd respond to be even crazier, and it'd just be like a never-ending cycle until you just died.
what?
Hmm.
The I don't remember what I was gonna say. What was the first part of what you said?
About what I just said.
Oh, ghosts being accepted.
Yeah,
They were like
ghosts are
people, like they fully accepted that there were
oh
ghosts, and if like you heard them, you weren't immediately like crazy.
yeah, your ghosts have been people back in the day were extremely superstitious, even more than nowadays. Like nowadays, ghosts you have people that believe in them and have your skeptics. But way back in the day, everyone knew that ghosts and demons especially were that was real stuff. You didn't mess with that because that was real, like super super real.
Yeah.
And then like if somebody like the mental disorders would cause people to think that they're possessed, or if some people just are an unnaturally violent, just they're an unnaturally violent person, then they just be called possessed, even if they weren't, like didn't think that they were. I mean, and so that was a big thing. Like demonic possession was a big thing that happened all the time.
Did they ever? What was the difference between like somebody saying that you're demon possessed versus being like a witch?
So a witch would be someone that's like working with the devil, like you've made some kind of pact with the devil, and he's given you unnatural powers. Like if someone was unnaturally gifted, and it was in like one of those environments, like with a pilgrim, they were super skeptical.
Pilgrim.
Um, Pilgrims, like the New England colonies,
They were like, why were they skeptical about witchcraft?
that was where the Salem witch trials happened, of the northern colonies
I don't
in
remember that.
1600s. The Salem witch trials were I forget, I think it was like Massachusetts, something like that, something that area. The Pilgrims and the original colonies, they were the ones that had the Salem witch trials.
But the witch trials, weren't those pretty much like anybody that was suspected of a witch?
Yeah,
They just
they were the
died.
extreme. They were the most extreme case because like if you just called someone a witch, everyone was like, yeah, I mean they're we have ways to prove that if they're a witch, and all the tests were to kill them.
So if
Like
you
yeah,
didn't like somebody, you could just be like
yeah,
witch, and then they would just
that
be
happened a
like,
lot.
well, we got to figure it out now.
That's the most extreme case. But like other than that, if someone was a witch, usually they just be called a witch because they were just naturally like. Usually it was women, like intelligent women that were trying to be like scientists. That was the most common thing. If you were a woman and you had a very very strong understanding of science, witch, you must be a witch. You made a pact with the devil, and that's why you're so smart. That's why you have these unnatural gifts. You're a witch, and they bring you at the stake.
It's weird how people fear intelligence.
Oh yeah,
Like
because
even like today, it's
yeah,
still. I mean, obviously we're not burning people for being smart, but like from all the way back then, even to today, people are still like intimidated by intelligence.
yeah, because like it's the most powerful thing you can have. Like if you have like some massive advantage over someone just out of sheer intelligence, and like you're trying like if you're someone who's not very smart, and there's somebody else who has like this massive understanding of science, and you know nothing about science, you know nothing about anything about how anything works. What they do looks like science. Like
Yeah.
if you were to be like a peasant in the medieval ages, and there was like an alchemist, like somebody who knew how to like. I mean, obviously they didn't have chemicals, but like if somebody who was trained in using plant life to make certain like healing things, like tonics, that seemed like witchcraft, or like that seemed like magic. Because how are you able to just turn this plant into something that heals me? Doesn't make any sense.
It's like you okay. It's like you take a plant and then like you boil it and you make like a tea, and they're just like
Yeah,
witch.
yeah,
And
like
you're just like, whoa, man! All I did was take this water and boil it and put this plant inside. That's it. I didn't do anything else. And they're just like, witch.
yeah, and
Like
like
you didn't just boil that water.
yeah, and it was mainly they called someone out from being a witch for believing and trying to prove something that was against what the general belief was. So because women were deemed less intelligent than men, if a woman was more intelligent than a man, like and she proved herself to be more intelligent by being a scientist, that was completely and totally unheard of, and it completely like uprooted everything that the general like understanding of how things were was. And so they instantly came to the conclusion that's not possible, and this is why it's not possible because you're a witch, and because of that you're gonna die. Or
So
if like
that makes them like a mega witch.
well, that's generally what witches were people like women that were intelligent, because it was the common belief was that women were not intelligent, not more than men anyway. And because like you because it's impossible, like literally it is not possible for a woman to be smarter than a man. If you're smarter than a man and you're a woman, it must be because you made a pact with the devil. That's the only way you could possibly be smarter than a man. So you're a witch by definition. That's what happened.
Wow.
And like another thing that happened was scientists that would disagree with the church, like Galileo, they tried to preach it to prove something that would disprove what the church teaches. They were also called out for being like
That was
associated with.
probably like the end of the world.
Oh yeah,
But like,
no, no,
oh no, you don't, Mister. You don't go against our church.
that was the number one response. The best defense the church had was calling people out as Satanists. If you didn't agree with the church, if you didn't agree with every single thing they said, you are a Satanist and you are excommunicated. That was a big term they did. excommunicated.
What does that
And
mean?
being
Like kicked out?
like kicked out of the faith you are in. Like if you like, it mainly happened to people that were well known, like monarchs in the medieval ages. Being excommunicated was the worst thing that could possibly happen to you on a social status. If you get excommunicated, no one will talk to you. No one your own peasantry might rebel against you and just completely overthrow your family because you are excommunicated. It basically like it means that the Pope looked at you and based on what someone else told him or what he's personally learned about you, he's deemed you no longer worthy of being part of the faith, and he just kicks you out. You're no longer part of us. You're an outsider.
Sorry, you're you're no longer good here.
Yeah,
You are no longer accepted. You tried to prove something that was against what I said.
or like they just did something that was unchristian.
Which was like what? I'm sure they probably deemed like everything like
Yeah,
that.
like if you like sometimes if you were like caught being like, in a scandal where you were like being unfaithful, like which I mean happened a lot.
Like
But if it was
if
like
you were
a
caught doing
big deal,
some late night witchcraft.
yeah, like I mean, witchcraft was a death sentence, but that very rarely happened in monarchs. 'Cause they knew not to do that. Usually, it was like big stuff. Like if you killed your brother, excommunicated. If you killed your daughter, excommunicated. If you killed your father, like it was usually murder, like full on familial murder. That's a big thing that caused it. That's one of the best, like the most common ways that people got excommunicated.
Well, that's not that bad.
I mean, yeah,
Like, I mean, if you're killing people and then
it's
you get whatever, okay,
well, it's
I get that.
specifically familial murder, patricide, matricide, whatever cousins are, that sort of thing. Yeah,
Patricide? Is that what you said? Patricide?
patricide's when you kill your dad. Matricide's when you kill your mom. What's I don't I'm not sure what the shoulder is, but there's an aside for every single type of killing. And if you kill a family member back in those days in the Christian faith, it was like the biggest no you could possibly do, other than making a pact with the devil. Like that was a big no.
Well, I mean, if you're killing your whole family, I mean, come on, man. You can
Yeah.
you can't expect a whole lot.
I mean, if
Why was it so common?
I mean, it wasn't common to get excommunicated. Being
No, I mean
excommunicated
common
was
for people to kill like their mom or their dad or whatever.
well. Let's say that you're the heir to the throne. All right, so you're the youngest or no, sorry, oldest. You're a boy, and so you're the prince of a kingdom. Like let's say you're the prince of Hungary, the medieval kingdom of Hungary, and your dad is the king of Hungary. All right, so you're the next in line. When your dad dies, you get everything. You become king of Hungary. You get all the things that come with that, and you want that. So you just make sure that your dad dies,
You
so
just
you can
kill
get
them.
it a little earlier. You don't want to wait for him to die of old age or die from some random circumstance. So you orchestrate it. You make sure that he dies soon enough so that you get to become king faster and get to be king for as long as you can. And if you get caught doing that, then that leads to excommunication, things like that.
So do they like go in there like with a weapon and kill them, or do they just
Usually assassins. This is what they do a lot of times.
so like the doctor thing?
Yeah, like the doctor
They're
thing.
just like, hey, Dad has got a little bit too much blood, and we're gonna have to let some of that out. And
Yeah.
when you do, just kind of let a little bit too much out for me, would you? And then once I get to be king, I'll make sure you're taken care of.
Yeah.
So the doctor's like, instead of making like a little cut, he just like chops the arm off, and he's just like, oh no, all the blood, what's it gonna do? Was there a punishment for like medical malpractice?
I mean, if you're the court physician, which is like basically like the doctor that helps all the important people, then you pretty much just did your job. And if you messed up and like you did your job wrong, or at least one of the royal family members thought you did your job wrong, then you just got the heads in block. Like you just got your head chopped off by the king's orders. Like if the king wanted to execute you, he could just do it. Just snap his fingers, you're dead, and there's nothing that can stop you. Stop him. Like as a king, you have full control. If you don't like your physician, even if he's like a good physician, but he just treats you wrong, he disrespects you, off his head. Like you just take his head, he's dead. Execute him.
Really?
Being a king means that you can do whatever you want. Just as long as it doesn't, as long as the Pope doesn't hear about it. Because
Was it common for them to just like the doctor just did something and they're just like, oh, off with his head.
yeah, if you're the king and
They wouldn't just like fire him and be like, ah, just get out of here, and then just like go get another one.
usually they'd be like, well, it was kind of like a pastime of royalty to execute people they didn't like just because they could. So,
like they don't watch Sunday Night Football; they execute people.
oh yeah, but executions were a big piece of enjoyment because it was partially for royalty, partially for the peasantry, because you'd have you don't like somebody, you order them to be executed. You have them taken out on a big wooden platform. You have one of your heralds, one of the guys that has the reading to the public. He stands up on the platform and he reads out something you draw up or have someone else draw up that lists their crimes. Like you say, like you have a speaker speak to the crowd. This person did this, and because of that, it being a crime, they are sentenced to death. And everybody's like, "Yeah, kill him!" And they chop his head off, and everybody's like, "Yeah," and that's it.
Everybody's like, "Yeah, kill him off with his head."
It was a big piece of enjoyment. The peasantry loved a good execution.
Wasn't jeez. Peasantry loved a good execution.
Oh yeah, that was the highlight.
Was it free to watch?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure you could it was usually done in very public areas, specifically to try and get the people riled up to be excited about executing a criminal. So like they'd purposely go into the middle of town, build a platform, and then do the execution in full view of the entire town.
So then everybody gets to all get together.
Yeah, it was a good way.
We all saw it.
Because because you're entertaining the peasantry, which is good because you don't want the mob to get bored.
And it's a way for the king to stand up there and be like, "Look what I can do."
Yeah, like we caught this guy doing this shady stuff. How do you know he's doing shady stuff? Because I told you, and I'm the king, and I'm always right. So this guy's gonna die, and he's a criminal. And because I'm killing him, I'm doing you a service by killing a criminal, and that's why you should trust me.
Oh, that's twisted. It's like no matter what anybody else says, I'm the one that's right.
Well, yeah, because there's that whole divine right. Every king was the general consensus was that every king had been specifically chosen by God to be king, so they were unquestionable. If you question the king's rule, you're questioning God, and that's a death sentence. So they had absolute control.
So I know nobody probably would ever do this, but if you were at say one of these like executions or whatever, and the king was saying something, and you were just like, "You're an idiot."
You're what?
An idiot.
You cut out. Oh.
You're just like, "You're an idiot." Like, you dead?
I mean, if you get caught, yeah, you're dead.
No, they definitely know it's you. Like you stand up and you're like, "You're an idiot!" Like right to his face.
Guards coming at you, and if they catch you, they just bring you up alongside and kill you afterwards.
Like they kill the main guy, and then they're just like, "And this guy said I was an idiot, so he gets to die too."
Well, you see, usually they didn't just kill the one guy; they'd stock up prisoners. Like they'd have a big dungeon, and they'd one by one they'd accumulate people they didn't like that were going to be on the path to execution. Because it's expensive to reach this kind of thing. You don't want to just build a wooden platform and then take it down, and then build it up the next day again, and then take it down again, over and over and over.
Why didn't they just have a permanent platform somewhere?
Well, sometimes they did.
I mean,
but
obviously they're doing these things quite often, so
yeah.
Build a platform.
And also, like, you'd have to dispose of the head and the body. It's best to just do them in clusters. So they build up a bunch of people they didn't like, and once they either get once they're ready to kill them all, or the dungeon's running out of room, they take them all out in a big group, and just one by one they take their heads off.
Hey, our dungeon's running out of room.
Yeah.
We gotta get rid of some of these people. Mm-hmm. Could you imagine the eerie feeling, like if you're in the dungeon and you're in the dungeon, you're down there, it's starting to get full, and like like they're about to come get us, like we're about to be dead.
Yeah,
how come they didn't fight them?
Well, I mean, it was just so useless, and also there was an idea of like accepting your crimes was a big thing, because if you accept your crimes, then there's a chance that you could be forgiven and still get to heaven. So people would think like, I mean, if I'm just really sorry that I did this, or really sorry that I got, even if I'm innocent, as long as I don't make any more mistakes and just accept my punishment, then maybe I'll get to heaven anyway. So that's why they're placed it. Because if you run, that's a sin, and if that's your last sin, you're going to hell. So that's what they believe anyway.
So they're so they're just like, well, if I just be really sorry and I just let this guy just cut my head off,
Then just maybe,
I'll be good. Everything will be fine.
yeah.
I'll tell you one thing. If I'm in a dungeon and I know that they're coming to cut my head off, I'm not going to know without a fight. Like as soon as you open that cell door, we're throwing hands. We are fighting.
And there was another thing was trial by combat. Trial by combat was a thing. Like it's not fictional. It was a real thing that people would do. It wasn't super common.
Trial by combat.
Trial by combat. So if you were like see, back then they didn't really have a way to prove crimes. Like if someone committed a crime and nobody saw them commit the crime, but you're pretty sure they committed the crime, there was only one way to get them imprisoned, like to take the fall for what they did or what you think they did, and that was by trial by combat. Like you oust them, you say this person committed this crime, I can't prove it, so we're gonna let God decide who's right. And what that means is essentially you both go into a ring, a pit of sand usually, with swords, and you just fight to the death, and whoever wins was chosen by God to win.
So that's why they did that.
Mm-hmm.
I figured, okay, I didn't think that had any like religious meaning. I thought that they would just do that just because they wanted something to do.
I mean,
They're just like, hey,
very
I'm bored, you're bored. We got these two guys that could fight to the death. Well, let's let them fight to the death.
Mm-hmm. And like there were certain rules for certain like areas. Like Vikings had a set of rules, but mainly it was like if somebody questioned your honor, then you duel to see who's right.
What do you mean question your honor?
Like if somebody accused you of something that you didn't do, or maybe you did do, but you didn't want to know it, and they couldn't prove it. Like if someone accused you of being unfaithful, like you've been sleeping around, and even though you have a wife, and they'd accuse you of that, and you say, "How dare you?" And you challenge them to a duel to decide who's right, and whoever wins the duel is right. So to fight to the death.
No, whoever wins the duel is better.
Yeah. There was a difference back then. Being right and being better there was no difference.
So I mean, for sure there was some guy that was just like an ungodly like fighter, and he was probably just lying about everything, cheating on his wife, and everybody like calls him out, and then he just murders everybody.
I mean, even if you're like a really good fighter, like sword play is so dangerous because they wouldn't be wearing armor; they'd just be wearing cloth, like just straight cloth. And even if you win the fight, if you get hit by like a really 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 like bad blow, you're still dead. It doesn't matter how good you are. Even the best might slip up every now and then.
Oh yeah, because if you get injured, then they're just gonna take you to the doctor who's gonna kill you anyway.
So yeah. Remember, it doesn't look like how it does in the shows and the movies. It's not like really wide telegraphed swings. Like it's lightning fast. Like when people are sword fighting, it was lightning fast. Like in real, like if you watch World Star, like it doesn't look how it does in the movies. Like this fights don't look like they do in the movies. It's lightning fast. Like you blink and you miss it, and somebody's on the floor bloody. It's not like super slow motion.
Yeah, because they're like legitimately fighting for their life.
Yeah, and same thing with swords. Like it's lightning fast, and it's like duels usually didn't last more than seconds. Like somebody was gonna be dead within the first 3 swings, almost always.
I wonder if like anybody ever tried like an old like oh, let's shake hands, oh, like stab him.
I mean, probably, but if people see you do that, they're probably gonna execute you anyway for being unhonorable.
That's true. I forgot that they can just execute you for anything.
And any reason they come up with.
Do you think anybody? Well, I'm sure the answer is yes, but I wonder if anybody ever just like two guys ever just like sword fought to the death for fun.
I mean, for For fun, like I don't think they just do it for fun.
Like two guys that like don't like each other, but they don't have a they're not like calling each other out. They just want to fight, so they're just like, let's just do it.
Well, there was another form of tribal combat called First Blood. So whoever draws blood first is the winner. So you're not going for lethal. You're just trying to draw blood. So you just get cut across the arm. That's the end of the duel. Duel stops instantly.
So what if you hit him with a really good one?
And you accidentally kill him? Oops.
Well, accidentally.
Well, yeah.
Like you're just trying to draw blood, but it's like, I mean, I took his head off and the blood came out.
I tripped and my sword went through him. I mean, he kind of stumbled into it, so that's kind of like his fault,
Yeah.
So.
You see, he was charging at me, and I just happened to stick my sword out. So, I mean, this whole thing is his fault.
Honestly, yeah.
I mean, I didn't put the hole in his chest. He did that to himself.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, well, we're going to execute you anyway.
I mean, usually if someone died in a first blood duel, I'm pretty sure they just won. Like,
well,
it was an accident.
What else are you supposed to do?
Yeah.
Then the first blood duel just turns into a duel to the death.
Yeah, accidentally. Anyways.
So these people obviously did not have living a long time in mind at all.
Oh no, because like the life expectancy back then was like, if you got to 50, you were ancient. Most people died around 40, like 40 flat. That's when most people died.
So like, jeez. So like whenever you're 30, you're like, my time's almost up.
Yeah, when you were 30, that's pretty old. Like you were getting there.
Like 30 was like the equivalent of like today's like 70.
Yeah, because you remember like back then people were generally smaller and weaker than humans now. Like people used to think like, oh, people are so weak nowadays. No, if you went back in like an average sized man and you went back to the medieval period, you're a big guy and you're strong compared to everyone else around you. They might have more grip strength, but you've got like a head and a half height over top of them. The average height was like 5 foot back in those days. Like people were small back in those days. Mm-hmm. But people were small, and they were generally pretty weak too because their diets were horrible. Unless
they're probably just eating whatever they could find.
Whatever they could find. Like the average guy's gonna have barely any meat on him. He's gonna be like 5 foot. He's gonna be pretty easy to take down.
Yeah.
Like they were scrappy, sure, but weak and small.
Were the Vikings really strong?
Strong, yeah. They were tall-ish. They were taller than normal. Like, cause like Vikings were different because they had, instead of just like living off the land, they went around and stole everything that everyone else had, and they were a warrior culture. So like it was the strongest. The strongest people got like paired up with the strongest people. So like they were like the biggest, strongest women were paired up with the biggest, strongest men, and so that just naturally makes bigger, stronger people.
Yeah.
So it's a warrior culture. So like the Vikings were the biggest, strongest, toughest people of their time. So naturally they were really, really scary.
That would be terrifying.
Yeah.
Can you imagine if you were like 6'8" or something back then?
You'd be
everybody's just like looking up at you like, oh man.
Yeah. And that's a huge advantage because like the sheer amount of reach you'd have, especially if you get like a really big weapon, no one's gonna be able to beat you. Like no, unless they hit you with a crossbow or a bow. If they get in a melee range of you, you're gonna be able to take them out pretty easily.
Yeah. Like say you're like a Viking, like you jump on somebody else's boat, and then like the whole boat rocks, and they're like, oh, who is that? And then you just see some giant monster. You're like, oh man, yep, I'm going back under the deck.
Especially if you had armor. If you're a big guy and you have lots of armor on, like you got some thick chainmail, or especially if you have plate armor, and you're like 6'5" plate armor, and you have like a Zweihander, like those massive great swords, you're unstoppable. Nothing's gonna be able to take you down except for like a crossbow bolt or an artillery piece.
Everybody just runs out of your way. They're just like, I don't even want to mess with this guy.
Yeah.
Wait, they had crossbows back then?
I mean, they we're kind of like jumping all over the place. Crossbows were like, I think they came into practice around 1200, 12 for 1300. So yeah, medieval ages, yeah, they had crossbows.
That's old.
Yeah, been around for a while. Mainly in the Western area, like Western Italian area. That's when they first came up, I think.
I wonder how they had, well they had regular bows, right?
But regular bows have been around since the dawn of man.
So I'm sure the regular bows were the weight was probably they were probably like incredibly hard to pull back.
Well, it depends on the bow, because like there was short bows, which were like the first bows people made and used, which are not that different. They weren't designed to shoot very long ranges. They weren't designed to be very heavy or very powerful. They had recurve bows, which were much more difficult to like make. They were a lot more like intricate, but they could get a lot more distance and they were a lot more powerful. And you had long bows, and long bows are the dangerous ones. Like the long bows, I think it was the British that had them first, and British Isles, Saxons, and those things were terrifying. Like the British instantly became the most dangerous military in the world once they invented longbows, because longbows are just that dangerous. Like they're so dangerous.
Jeez. Well, I'm sure they probably had to have shot two, three, four times harder than anything else.
Well, it's mainly the range, because a longbow, like 100 pound longbow, 80 to 100 pounds is like what the normal yeomen would it be called? You know, the archers the British people had. That'd be the average poundage, and that stuff can go like almost a mile. If it's heavy enough poundage and you're good enough, you could get that. You could get up to a mile, I believe, in range.
Well, most bows these days aren't even like 80 to 100 pounds.
Yeah.
Like now, like a good, like a really good like hunting bow, like a compound hunting bow, is probably 60 to 70 pound pull. Probably
Mm-hmm.
it's probably about average.
But compound's designed to be easier to draw back.
I mean, true, but it's still 60 to 70 pounds.
Yeah. But like compared to what everyone else had with their short bows, like the difference between a long bow and a short bow, like a 20 pound, 30 pound versus an 80 to 100 pound, is huge. Like that's a massive difference.
How do you think like I don't even know how to describe it. Like one, I guess like clan or like country or whatever, whoever's fighting together.
Hmm.
If these people, say the English people had longbows and then somebody else had like these short bows, is the only way that these people figure out longbows is from these people?
Usually,
They
yeah,
kill
they
one
copy
of
them.
them and get a hold of it and they're just like, oh, what is this thing? And they try to like
Yeah,
recreate it.
yeah, because like the British, the longbows are so like unique to the British. Like other people tried making similar things, but they were just never as good. Like I'm pretty sure the Vikings actually had like an early type of longbow. Like they were kind of like longbows, but not as good, nowhere near as good. But like that's why crossbows were invented to be the answer to longbows. I'm pretty sure. Like crossbows were put up against bows because they had less range, but they hit harder. So like a crossbow could square off with the longbow relatively well. It took longer to load. Didn't have as much range, but they hit harder. Like you could pierce armor with a crossbow, and like longbows wouldn't always pierce armor.
Because there had to be like the first person to do like everything that's been done. So like whenever there's like a war going on, there had to be the first person to make the cannon.
Yeah,
So like they
I
went
think
to war with someone and they're over here like shooting crossbows or whatever, and then they just hear like a boom, and then like a cannonball comes at them, and they're like, "Whoa, hold on, what is this?
I think
We got to get one of these."
I think that exact thing happened at the siege of Constantinople with the Ottomans, the Ottoman Empire. I forget what it was, maybe 1000s, 1100s, probably like 1100s, something like that. It was pretty early on in history because the Ottomans, I believe, the Ottomans were the first people to use cannons. Strangely enough, and they brought these massive cannons that shot. That at the time they had stone cannonballs, like massive stone cannonballs, like five
Oh,
foot wide stone cannonballs, and the cannons were huge. Like these things would be like 6 foot in diameter, like huge cannons. And they just fired. They pulled them up to the walls of Constantinople, and the walls of Constantinople were known for being like the most fortified walls in the entire world. It doesn't get better than the Theodosian walls of Constantinople, and the Ottomans' cannons showed up, and the Byzantines were like, "Yeah, we'll be fine." I'm not sure what that thing does, but I'm sure no one's ever breached the walls before, so we'll be fine. And they the cannons show up, boom, and then a massive chunk of the wall goes down, and panic breaks out. People are like shocked at what's happening.
Like, what did they just do?
Yeah.
Nobody else has ever done this. I don't know I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Well, we've been going for pretty much about 2 hours, so I don't have anything. I don't have anything interesting to say.
All right.
Do you have anything else?
I like to think of.